Yuna stood at the podium in the great hall of Orath Ven and looked out at 1,000 alien faces that did not care about her. She had done this 6 times before. This was the 7th. Every year she came to this place, stood in this same spot, and asked for the same thing. Every year they said no. "Respected members of the Galactic Council," she began, keeping her voice steady, "the people of Earth once again request independent military authorization, as granted to every other spacefaring species under Council Charter." The hall was enormous. The ceiling curved upward like the inside of a shell, glowing with soft blue light. Delegates from 42 species sat in their designated sections, some hovering, some resting in liquid tanks, some standing on legs that bent in ways that made Yuna's knees ache just watching. None of them looked at her with anything close to respect. Sahai Arbiter Velen sat at the top of the chamber on a raised platform made of dark stone. He was ancient. His body was long and pale, with 8 limbs folded neatly beneath him like a spider resting on a web. His eyes, all 6 of them, blinked slowly as Yuna spoke. He had heard this speech before. He already knew what he was going to say. When Yuna finished, Velen leaned forward. His voice was deep and smooth and carried across the chamber without effort. "Ambassador Yuna, the Council values Earth's contributions. However, granting full military rights to a species still in its emergent phase would be premature. Galactic stability must come first. Your request is denied." There was no debate, no discussion. A few delegates tapped their consoles in agreement. Most did not even bother. Yuna nodded. She thanked the Council for their time. She walked off the platform with her back straight and her face calm. No one in that room saw her hands shaking behind the podium. No one saw the way she bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted iron. She had learned a long time ago that aliens did not read human expressions well. That was the only advantage she had. Back on Earth, 12,000 light-years away, Admiral Doha watched the broadcast from Fleet Command in Busan. The room was underground, deep beneath the old naval base. Screens covered every wall, showing fleet positions, colony maps, and intelligence feeds. Doha sat in a plain chair, his uniform neat, his face unreadable. He watched Yuna get turned away for the 7th time, and he said nothing. Sayok stood behind him. Sayok was the intelligence director for Earth's Outer Rim Division. He was a thin man with tired eyes who always looked like he had not slept enough, because he never had. He waited until the broadcast ended, then placed a tablet on the table in front of Doha. "They are not just ignoring us." "Yes, sir," Sayok said quietly. "They are feeding our enemies." Doha picked up the tablet. On it was a classified report, assembled over 2 years from intercepted communications, stolen cargo manifests, and testimony from informants on 6 different worlds. The report told a simple and ugly story. The 3 species that had been raiding Earth's colony ships along the border were not acting alone. They were being armed by the Council. Weapons, fuel, targeting data, and all of it funneled through shell organizations that traced back to the Council's own military procurement office. Doha read the report twice. His face did not change. "How confident are you?" he asked. "Very," Sayok said. Doha set the tablet down and looked at the blank screen where Yuna's face had been. "She has been smiling at them for 11 years, he said. 11 years of being polite to the people who are trying to kill us." "Yes, sir." Doha was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "What else?" Sayok told him about Taiho. Taiho was the chief engineer aboard the research vessel Baekdu, a ship that officially did not exist. It was hidden in a shipyard carved into the ice beneath Europa's surface. Taiho had been working on something for 3 years. It had no name, only a number, Project 0091, a new drive system, faster than anything in the galaxy, A drive that did not use the Council's warp lanes, which meant it could not be tracked, monitored, or shut down. "How close is he?" Doha asked. "Months. Maybe less." Doha nodded slowly. He filed that away. Then he waited. He did not have to wait long. 3 days later, Seok came to him again, this time in the middle of the night. His face was different now, not tired, afraid. "A clerk in the Council's administrative office contacted us through a dead drop channel," Seok said. "His name is Thesson. He is low-ranking. Nobody. But he has access to internal documents." "And?" Seok placed another tablet on the table. This one contained a single file, translated from the Council's administrative language into Korean and then into English. The file was labeled with a code that meant nothing to most people, but Seok had figured out what it was. Resolution 7 Omega. Doha read it. The resolution authorized what it called the preemptive pacification of Earth. The language was clean and diplomatic, full of words like stability and protective action and managed transition. But the meaning underneath was brutal. The Council planned to strip Earth of every weapon, every ship, every piece of military technology. Earth's colonies would be placed under Council governance. Earth itself would be reclassified as an agricultural zone, a farming world, a vassal state. The vote was already being organized in secret. It would happen within the year. Doha read the document 3 times. He set the tablet down gently as if it were made of glass. He sat in his chair and stared at the wall for a full minute without speaking. Seok watched him. He had known Doha for 20 years. He had never seen the man angry. He was not sure Doha was angry now. The Admiral's face was perfectly still, but something behind his eyes had changed. Something had clicked into place, like a lock turning, like a safety being switched off. Doha picked up a secure line. He dialed a number that connected to exactly one person. When the line opened, he spoke 5 words. "Sir, they are coming for us." Then he hung up, and the room was very quiet, and outside the window the ocean was dark, and the stars above Busan were bright. And somewhere out among those stars, a galaxy full of species that had never once taken humanity seriously was about to learn what a terrible mistake that was. 6 months passed, and nothing changed. At least, that is what the galaxy believed. Yuna continued to attend council sessions on Orath Ven. She smiled, she filed amendments, she submitted proposals that she knew would be rejected, and when they were rejected, she thanked the council for their consideration and walked out with her back straight and her chin up. She played the part of the obedient junior species so well that some of the alien delegates began to feel almost sorry for her. Almost. Behind the curtain, our Earth was becoming something else entirely. Admiral Doha stood in a cavern beneath the surface of Europa and watched a warship take shape. The cavern was vast, carved out of the moon's ice by machines that had worked in silence for 2 years. Above the ceiling was an ocean, and above the ocean was a shell of frozen water 100 kilometers thick. No satellite could see this place. No scanner could reach it. The cold hid the heat signatures. The ice hid the electromagnetic noise. And it was the perfect place to build something that was not supposed to exist. The ship in front of him was the 9th one completed this month. It was sleek, dark, and built for one purpose. Not exploration. Not trade. War. Doha had given the order 6 months ago. The same night he read, Resolution 7 Omega. The order was simple. Operation Long Winter. Full-scale covert militarization. Every decommissioned shipyard that Earth still had, every hidden facility on the dark side of Luna, like in the asteroid belt, beneath Europa's ice, all of them came alive again. Workers were recruited under false contracts. Materials were moved through civilian cargo routes. The official fleet count remained at 40 ships, exactly the number the Council allowed. The real number was 400, and it was growing. On the Bayekdu, buried in a second cavern not far from where Doha stood, Taiho finished his work. He had not slept in 3 days. His eyes were red, and his hands smelled like burnt wiring, and his back ached from bending over consoles for hours. But when the final test results came in, he forgot all of that. He sat down on the floor of his lab and stared at the numbers on the screen and began to laugh. Project 0091 was complete. The fold-skip drive. Every species in the galaxy used the same system to travel between stars. The warp lanes. They were corridors of bent space maintained by massive relay stations, and the Council controlled every single one of them. If the Council wanted to stop a species from traveling, they simply shut down access to the lanes. It was the leash around every civilization's neck. The fold-skip drive did not use the warp lanes. It folded space directly, jumping a ship from one point to another without passing through any corridor, any relay, any checkpoint. It was instant. It was untraceable. And it meant that Earth's ships could go anywhere in the galaxy without asking permission. Taiho called Doha. "It works," he said. That was all he needed to say. While Taiho built the drive and Doha built the fleet, Hana built the army. Commander Hana ran the Special Operations Division from a training facility hidden in the mountains of Gangwon Province. The facility did not appear on any map. The soldiers who trained there did not officially exist. And Hana had spent the last 6 months studying every species in the Galactic Council with the focus of a surgeon learning anatomy. She learned where their bones were weakest. She learned which species could not see in low light and which ones could not hear above certain frequencies. She learned their combat doctrines, their formation habits, their psychological pressure points. She trained her soldiers to fight in zero gravity, in alien atmospheres, and in environments with twice Earth's gravity and half its oxygen. But the thing she was most proud of was not any weapon or tactic. It was discipline. Her soldiers knew how to kill, but more importantly, they knew when not to. That, she believed, would matter more than anything when the time came. Seok, meanwhile, was fighting a quieter war. He had turned Thesson, the alien clerk who leaked Resolution 7 Omega, into a full intelligence asset. Thesson was terrified. But he kept passing information because he believed what the Council was doing was wrong. Seok respected that. He also used it. Through Thesson, Seok began feeding the Council false intelligence, reports that showed Earth's military shrinking, data that suggested human morale was low, diplomatic cables that hinted Yuna was preparing to recommend voluntary disarmament. Every piece of information made Earth look weaker, more defeated, more ready to submit. The Council ate it up. Evelyn read the reports and felt satisfied. The humans were breaking just as he expected. Weak species always did. He moved the timeline for Resolution 7 Omega forward by 2 months. He was so confident, in fact, that he sent Counselor Aura to deliver the final warning personally. Aura visited Yuna in her quarters on Orath Ven late one evening. Aura was Tessari, a species that looked somewhat like tall, silver-skinned deer walking upright. And she was one of the few council members who had ever spoken to Yuna with genuine kindness. Tonight, her large, dark eyes were full of worry. "The vote is happening in 14 days, Aura said softly. "I cannot stop it. No one can. If your people resist, the Council will send everything it has. Please, Yuna, convince your leaders to accept the terms. It does not have to be violent." Yuna poured her a cup of tea. Human tea from Earth. "Ye have always been honest with me. Aura have always been honest with me." Aura left believing she had done a kind thing, that she had given humanity one last chance to bow gracefully. She did not see Yuna open the secure channel the moment the door closed. She did not hear the conversation that followed. "They vote in 14 days, Yuna said. There was a pause on the other end. And then Doha's voice came through, calm and steady, the voice of a man who had been waiting for exactly this moment. "That is more than enough." That night, across 300 hidden shipyards scattered through Earth's solar system, the lights came on all at once. Deep in the ice of Europa, in the hollowed-out rocks of the asteroid belt, on the dark side of the moon where no sunlight reached, engines began to hum. Hulls began to glow. Weapons systems ran their final checks. Then 400 warships, 400 crews, thousands of soldiers who had trained in secret for months, who had kissed their families goodbye without being able to say why, who had looked up at the stars and known that something terrible and necessary was coming. The galaxy was asleep. It had no idea what was about to wake up. The Council did not wait for the vote. High Arbiter Velen had lived for 600 years, and he had not survived that long by being patient when his instincts told him something was wrong. And something about the humans felt wrong. They were too calm, too polite, too accepting of a future that should have terrified them. Species facing extinction did not file diplomatic amendments. They screamed, or they ran, or they fought. The humans did none of these things, and that silence made the old Arbiter's skin crawl. So he skipped the vote. He called General Kumon to his private chamber and gave him a direct order. Go to their system. Disarm them. Do it now, before they have time to think. Kumon was the finest military commander the Council had ever produced. He was tall, armored in natural bone plating, with a face like a carved mask. He had fought in 19 wars across 3 centuries and had never lost. He did not expect to start losing now, not against humans. He assembled a fleet of 200 warships, the largest show of force the Council had deployed in a generation. He flew them through the warp lanes toward Earth's solar system, and when he arrived at the edge of human space, he opened every communication channel in the galaxy and broadcast a single message. People of Earth, by order of the Galactic Council, you are to power down all military vessels and submit to immediate inspection and disarmament. You have 6 hours to comply. Failure to do so will result in enforcement action. I to species that forget their place. Earth to species that forget their place. Earth did not respond. 1 hour passed. Nothing. 2 hours. 3. Kumon waited on the bridge of his flagship, arms folded across his chest. His officers began to shift uncomfortably. 5 hours passed. Still nothing. No transmissions, no movement, no plea for mercy. And at 5 hours and 58 minutes, every screen in the galaxy flickered. Yuna appeared. She was not standing in the council chamber. She was not wearing diplomatic robes. She stood on the bridge of the Bekdu, dressed in the dark uniform of the United Earth Navy, and behind her, through the viewport, the stars looked wrong. There were too many lights, and they were moving. She spoke clearly, in a voice that carried no anger, no panic, only a terrible and final calm. For 30 years, we asked for fairness. For 30 years, we were patient. We filed our appeals. We endured your raids. We buried our dead and said nothing. You mistook our patience for weakness. You were wrong. She paused. The galaxy held its breath. This is humanity's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Any vessel that does not leave our space in the next 60 seconds will not leave at all. On the bridge of his flagship, Kumon watched the broadcast and laughed. It was a short, harsh sound. The laugh of a predator amused by prey that had forgotten its size. He turned to his weapons officer and gave the order to advance. 60 seconds passed. And then, the sky broke open. They did not come from the warp lanes. They did not come from any direction that Kumon's sensors could track. They simply appeared. 400 warships, folding into real space all at once, above and below and behind and between the Council fleet. So close that Kumon could see their hull markings through his viewport without magnification. The formations made no sense. They were not in any pattern his tactical systems recognized. They were everywhere. They were inside his formation. For 3 seconds, nothing moved. Two fleets hung in space, face to face, and the distance between them was close enough to touch. Then Doha's voice came across the command channel. One sentence, two words, weapons free. The Battle of Sol lasted 11 minutes. Human ships did not fight the way the galaxy expected. They did not hold formation. They did not trade broadsides. They used the fold-skip drive in combat, something no species had ever attempted, something Kumon would have called impossible 5 minutes ago. They jumped, mid-fight. They blinked out of existence in one spot and appeared in another, behind a ship that was still turning to face where they had been. They fired, jumped. They fired again. Kumon's ships shot at ghosts. Their targeting systems locked onto positions that were already empty. Their formation, designed for a disciplined exchange of fire, collapsed in seconds as ships tried to turn in every direction at once and began blocking each other's firing lines. It was not a battle, it was a demonstration. 11 minutes. 142 council ships disabled, 38 destroyed. The rest drifting, their engines dark, their weapons offline. The human losses. 6 ships damaged, none destroyed. Kumon stood on his bridge as the lights died around him. His weapons were gone, his engines were gone, his communications were gone. He was, for the first time in 300 years, completely helpless. The airlock opened. Commander Hana walked onto his bridge with a squad of soldiers behind her. They moved like water, smooth and quiet, their weapons up but not aimed at anyone. They did not shout. They did not threaten. And they cleared the bridge in seconds, and then Hana stood in front of Kumon and looked up at him. He was twice her height. She did not seem to notice. "You are going home," she said. "You are going to tell them what happened here, every detail, do you understand?" Kumon stared at her. His jaw tightened. He wanted to say something, anything, that would restore some fragment of his dignity. But there was nothing to say. He had been beaten in 11 minutes by a species his people called primitive. He nodded. Hana turned and walked off the bridge. Her soldiers followed. They left Kumon standing alone in the dark, surrounded by the wreckage of the council's arrogance. Nari broadcast the entire battle live. She was on the Bekdu, her camera steady, her voice calm and professional even as the ship shook around her. She showed everything. The jump, the strike, the 11 minutes. She did not add commentary. She did not need to. 42 species watched. The billions of beings on hundreds of worlds saw the most powerful military in the galaxy taken apart like a child's toy by a species they had been told was harmless. In the council chamber on Orath Ven, High Arbiter Velen stood perfectly still as the feeds went dark, one by one. His 6 eyes were wide. His 8 limbs were frozen. Around him, the delegates were shouting, scrambling, demanding explanations. He heard none of it. For the first time in his 600-year life, he felt something he did not have a word for. Humans, he would later learn, called it fear. The galaxy expected humanity to stop. They had made their point. They had defended their home. Now, surely they would pull back behind their borders, build their walls, and wait for the universe to leave them alone. Admiral Doha did the opposite. 72 hours after the Battle of Sol, while the Council was still trying to understand what had happened, the United Earth Navy launched Operation Daybreak. It was not a defense. It was not a warning. It was a hammer. Simultaneous strikes hit every Council military installation within 50 light-years of human space. Shipyards, weapons depots, communication relays, sensor arrays. The fold-skip drive made it possible. Human ships appeared without warning, struck fast, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. There were no warp lane signatures to track, no convoy routes to intercept. No pattern to predict. The Council's entire military strategy was built on one idea: control the warp lanes, control the galaxy. Every choke point, every relay station, every logistics corridor ran through the Council's network. For 10,000 years, this had been enough. No species could fight if it could not move. No rebellion could spread if the lanes were locked. But humanity did not use the lanes. Humanity walked through walls. Taiho led an engineering corps to the Olvari Relay, at one of the largest warp lane hubs in the sector. It connected 9 species to their home systems. Without it, their trade routes, their supply lines, their military logistics would all go dark. The Council expected humans to destroy it. Taiho did something worse. He locked it. His team rewrote the relay's operating codes in 3 hours. When they were done, the warp lanes still worked, but only for species that had withdrawn from the conflict. Everyone else was frozen in place. Meteo broadcast the new terms to every affected world in plain language. "Stop fighting us! Get your lanes back! Keep fighting! Stay stuck!" 3 species switched sides within a day. While Teho cut the galaxy's roads, Hana went for the heart. Orath Ven, the Council's capital station, the place where Velen sat on his dark stone throne and decided the fate of species. It was supposed to be untouchable. It was surrounded by defense platforms, shielded by the most advanced barrier technology in the galaxy, and protected by a garrison of 50,000 soldiers drawn from a dozen species. Hana brought 2,000. Her assault was surgical. Her team's fold skipped directly inside the station's outer ring, bypassing the defense platforms entirely. They moved through the corridors in small units, fast and precise, disabling systems without destroying them. They cut power to weapons batteries but left life support running. And they sealed armories but did not harm the soldiers inside. They captured the communication hub, the power core, and the main docking bay in 4 hours. When Hana's soldiers reached the council chamber, they found the doors sealed and barricaded from inside. Hana stood in front of the doors, looked at them for a moment, and then knocked. Just knocked. 3 times with her knuckles, like she was visiting a neighbor. The doors opened 12 minutes later. The Yuna walked into the council chamber for the last time. She had stood in this room as a beggar for 11 years, asking for scraps from a table she was never invited to sit at. Now she walked in flanked by soldiers, and the room was silent, and every eye was on her. She did not gloat, she did not shout. She stood where Velen usually stood and laid a document on the podium. "These are our terms," she said. "Read them." The terms were not what anyone expected. Yet humanity did not demand territory. It did not demand tribute or submission or revenge. It demanded reform, a new council structure with equal representation, no veto power for any single species, independent military rights for all members, full transparency in all resolutions, an end to the emergent species protocol. It was, by the standards of galactic conquest, absurdly reasonable. While Yuna presented the terms, Counselor Aura was working behind the scenes. She had watched the Battle of Sol with the same shock as everyone else, but unlike Velen, she did not feel fear. She felt relief. She had known for decades that the Council was rotten. She had watched it suppress species after species, always in the name of stability, always for the benefit of those who were already powerful. She had tried to change it from within and failed. Now someone had kicked the door down, and she intended to walk through it. Neora contacted the leaders of the Tessari Dominion, the Hollow March Confederation, and 2 other species who had privately expressed doubts about the Council's direction. She shared humanity's terms. She argued that this was not a defeat, but an opportunity. Within hours, all 4 species formally withdrew from the Council's military coalition and declared support for the restructuring. Velen's alliance was fracturing. His fleets were scattered across the sector. Unable to move because Taiho had locked the warp lanes. His capital was occupied. His own council members were abandoning him. And then Siok delivered the final blow. He released everything, every classified file, every secret resolution, every record of the Council's 10,000-year history of suppressing emergent species. The documents showed that humanity was not the first species the Council had tried to pacify. They were the 14th. The other 13 had been quietly crushed. A network on every world, in every network, on every world, in every language. She showed the documents alongside footage of the species that had been destroyed. She found survivors, descendants of civilizations that the Council had broken centuries ago. She let them speak. The reaction was immediate. On dozens of worlds, ordinary citizens who had never questioned the Council before took to the streets. They demanded answers. They demanded accountability. They demanded change. Velen sat in the council chamber, surrounded by Hana's soldiers, watching Nari's broadcast on a screen that his own staff had set up. He watched the documents scroll past. He watched the faces of the species he had helped destroy. He watched the protests spreading across worlds that had been loyal to him for centuries. Yuna stood across the room, watching him. She did not speak. She did not need to. Velen looked at the human woman standing where he had once stood, and he understood with a clarity that cut through 600 years of certainty that the galaxy he had built was already gone. It had been gone the moment he decided that humanity was too small to matter. It had been gone the moment he signed Resolution 7 Omega. It had been gone the moment he mistook silence for surrender. He looked at Yuna, and then she looked back, and there was no hatred in her eyes. That, somehow, was the worst part. The war ended not with a surrender, but with a conversation. It took 9 days of meetings in the same council chamber where Yuna had been humiliated for 11 years, except now the seats were arranged in a circle and no one sat higher than anyone else. Representatives from 36 species attended. Some came willingly, some came because they had no choice. But they came, and they talked. And slowly, painfully, they began to build something new. Yuna led the negotiations. She did not demand that the council be destroyed. She demanded that it be rebuilt. Every species would have a seat. Every species would have an equal vote. No one would hold veto power. No one would decide which civilizations were worthy and which were not. The Emergent Species Protocol was abolished on the second day. On the third day, the delegates voted to open all records to public access. On the fifth day, and they agreed to independent military rights for every member. It was messy. It was exhausting. Some delegates shouted. Some wept. One species walked out on the fourth day and came back on the sixth. But it happened because Yuna was patient and because she understood something that Velen never had. You cannot hold a galaxy together with a leash. You can only hold it together with trust, and trust has to be earned. While Yuna negotiated the future, Doha managed the present. He stood on the bridge of the Bekdu and oversaw the military drawdown. Human warships pulled back from occupied positions. Weapons were powered down. Boarding teams withdrew. The 400 ships that had changed the galaxy in 11 minutes returned to their hidden shipyards and went quiet. But Doha faced a harder decision first. Taiho came to him on the second day with an argument that he had clearly been rehearsing. "We cannot share the fold-skip drive," Taiho said. He was pacing. "Our moment we give it away, we lose our moment we give it away, we lose our leverage." Doha listened. He let Taiho finish. Then he said, "If we keep it to ourselves, we become them." Taiho stopped pacing. He opened his mouth, closed it, and sat down heavily in a chair. "I know," Doha said quietly. "I know it is a risk. But we did not fight this war to become the next council. We fought it so there would never need to be another one." The fold-skip drive specifications were released to all species on the 7th day. Taiho oversaw the transfer personally. He was not happy about it. But he understood. On Orath Ven, Hana remained stationed with a security force during the transition. She spent her days walking the corridors of a station that had been enemy territory a week ago, making sure the peace held. The one evening, Hana visited the medical bay. Kumon was there. The general who had led 200 warships against Earth was sitting on the edge of a bed, his arm in a brace, staring at the floor. He had been quiet since the battle. The fight had not just broken his fleet. It had broken something inside him. 3 centuries of certainty, 8 of believing he was invincible, gone in 11 minutes. Hana sat down across from him. She did not say anything for a while. Then Kumon spoke. "Why did you not destroy us?" he asked. His voice was low, confused. "You had the power. You could have killed every one of us at Seoul. Why didn't you?" Hana thought about it. "Because that was not the point," she said. Kumon looked at her. "Then what was the point?" "To make you listen." He stared at her for a long time. Then he nodded, slowly, and then looked back at the floor, and Hana left him with his thoughts. Velen's trial began on the 8th day. But it was not humanity that judged him. The new council did. Species that he had suppressed for thousands of years sat in the chamber and spoke about what had been done to them. They told stories that had been forbidden for centuries. They named civilizations that no longer existed. They listed the dead. Velen did not speak in his own defense. There was nothing to say. And he was not executed. The new council decided that death was too simple. He was sentenced to witness. For the rest of his long life, he would attend every session of the new Galactic Assembly. He would sit in the back row and watch the galaxy he had caged grow beyond him. He would see species he had called primitive build, explore, and thrive. He would see everything he feared come true, and he would live with it. Siok retired from intelligence work. He had spent too many years in the dark, reading other people's secrets, carrying the weight of things he could not share. He went home to Busan and found a small apartment near the coast. Thesan, the alien clerk who had risked everything to leak Resolution 7 Omega, was granted asylum on Earth. He came to Busan because it was the only place on the planet where he knew someone. They sat together in a small bar near the spaceport, drinking soju because Thesan had developed a taste for it, watching ships launch through the big windows. But the sunset was orange and pink, and the contrails of the ships turned gold as they rose into the sky. "Why are humans so kind to my people?" Thesan asked. "After everything the council did to you, after everything we almost did." Siok poured him another glass. "We have had practice forgiving," he said. "It is not easy. It is never easy. But we have had a lot of practice." Nari published her documentary 3 weeks later. She called it 30 Years of Silence, and it ran for 4 hours and was watched by more beings than any piece of media in galactic history. It showed the battles, the politics, the documents, the protests. But it did not end with any of those things. It ended with quiet footage of Earth, humans cooking breakfast, children running through a park, an old woman playing a piano in an empty room, a man fishing alone on a river at dawn, 2 teenagers laughing at something on a screen, a father holding a baby against his chest, and swaying gently, humming a song that had no words. The mundane things, the small things, the things the galaxy had never bothered to see. Yuna delivered the closing address to the first session of the new Galactic Assembly. She stood at the center of the circle, and every seat was full, and the chamber was quiet. "We did not come to the stars to conquer," she said. "We came because we looked up and wondered what was out there. And when you tried to push us back down, you learned something every bully eventually learns. The quiet ones are quiet for a reason." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Aura began to clap. It was a human gesture. She had learned it from Yuna. One by one, the other delegates joined in, some clapping, some making the sounds their species used for approval, until the whole chamber was alive with noise. Yuna smiled. For the first time in 11 years, it was real. That night, Naidoha stood alone on the observation deck of the Baekdu. The stars outside were bright and endless. He watched them the way he always did, quietly, with his hands behind his back. Taiho came and stood beside him. Neither of them spoke for a long time. A convoy of ships passed in the distance. Human ships and alien ships flying together in formation, the first joint exploration fleet in galactic history. They were heading for the outer arm, toward stars that no one had ever visited. It grew brighter. "No," he said softly, but grew brighter. "No," he said softly, but maybe their children will. The convoy disappeared into the dark between the stars, and the galaxy, for the first time in 10,000 years, was truly open.